It took me over a year to come up with the final experiment. Every time I would come up with an idea, it would just never work. And then one day, I got it. But I should probably go back to the very beginning. I'm Will Duffy, and I pastor a small church in Colorado. The day was August 2nd, 2021. I was scrolling through Facebook, and a friend of mine, her name is Wendy, she posted something about flat Earth. And at first, I thought she must be joking, but there was no punchline. So I read the comments, and it seemed genuine. This was very peculiar to me. How could someone today, in the 21st century, think the Earth is flat? And so I did what most people would do, and I commented to figure out what was going on. And I quickly learned she was very serious in her position. Wow. And my first reaction was, well, this will be easy to prove her wrong. I'll just show her some proof that we live on a globe. She'll quickly change her mind, and we can go on our merry way. But that is not what happened at all. She was ready for my arguments. She had good, solid answers for the proofs I was giving her. To be brutally honest, she knew the globe arguments better than I did. Now, a lot of people at this point would just write Wendy off and move on and not deal with the new information presented to them. But that is not who I am. If you know me, you know I have to get to the bottom of things. I have to know the truth. One way or the other, whether I'm right or wrong, I have to know the truth. You can ask my wife. Certain things will even keep me up at night until I figure them out. So instead of ignoring Wendy, I decided I needed to look into this more. And she would send me information, articles, videos, things that I could digest that I had probably never heard of before. And I went deep into the flat Earth rabbit hole. And I remember a huge moment for me. This was pivotal. A flat earther pointed out some duplicated clouds on an image of the Earth from space. And you know what made this so incredibly interesting? It was on NASA's website. I went to NASA's website myself to verify this, and sure enough, it was quite obvious there were duplicated clouds on what I believed was a picture of Earth from space. This is that moment when you really have to check yourself. That moment where you have to make that decision. Am I willing to go where this might lead? Am I willing to continue down this path knowing what might be at the end? And I just had to keep going. I had seen too much now. I needed to know what else there was that I did not know. And in this pursuit of truth, the debates were intense. The arguments didn't seem to convince either side. Everyone was pretty firm in their beliefs, and the debate just raged on. I eventually got tired of hearing the same arguments over and over and over again from both sides. And that is when I had my light bulb moment. This moment will forever change my life, and I believe will forever change history as we know it. I was driving home from work, and driving is where I do most of my deep thinking. And I decided on that drive that I was going to come up with a way to settle this debate. Literally settle it once and for all. I didn't have a name for it yet, but this was the genesis of the final experiment. This would be the final experiment in the flat Earth versus globe debate. I told my wife as soon as I walked in the door. She gets to receive the brunt of my excitement, not understanding why I'm so elated, and just gives me that look of, what in the world are you talking about? I told her that I was going to end the debate over whether the earth was flat or a globe. She said, and how exactly are you going to do that? I said, I don't know yet, but I've decided to do it, and so I'm going to do it. That began the long and arduous task of figuring out what the experiment would be that could put all of this to bed. And I would brainstorm ideas, and they never panned out. They were either impossible or too expensive or would not be convincing to one side or the other. And then I noticed a pattern. All my ideas were taking me to the southern hemisphere. And this makes sense. The southern hemisphere is very different on the globe model compared to the flat earth model. I would look at flights and come up with ideas of taking those flights and seeing which direction they would travel and what you'd see out the window and how long the flight would be. But there were flaws in all of those ideas. What if there were clouds and you couldn't see out the window? What if the flight was at night? What if a compass doesn't work on a plane or in the southern hemisphere? And how would we account for jet streams and know the true ground speed that the plane was traveling? It just wouldn't work. And then one day, I was watching an interview, and that is where I finally got the idea for the final experiment. It was David Weiss. He is best known as Flat Earth Dave. And here's what he said.
One of the arguments that people give is on a flat Earth, you can't have a 24-hour sun, a midnight sun in Antarctica. And I totally agree. But there is no midnight sun in Antarctica.
That's it. Antarctica and the 24-hour sun. But most importantly, Dave Weiss made me realize the single most important thing when it comes to the final experiment is that both sides agree. Both sides agree that if there is a 24-hour sun, we live on a globe with Antarctica as an island at the bottom of it. And both sides agree that if there's not a 24-hour sun, we live on a flat plane with Antarctica encircling the rest of the continents. This was the most important foundation for the final experiment. Agreement from both sides on what the results of the experiment would prove. And what I appreciate about Flat Earth Dave is that he, possibly more than anyone else, is willing to put his money where his mouth is. He has a public Bitcoin challenge where he will give you 3 Bitcoin if you can show him one proof we live on a globe. So this is how the final experiment came to be. This is the journey that I went on personally in my life that culminated with my idea for the final experiment. A lot of people are going to ask where things stand with me. I do believe we live on a globe, but I came up with the final experiment because I can't prove it. There are people who claim they've been to Antarctica and claim they've seen a 24-hour sun, but I've never done that myself. And there are others who claim they've been to Antarctica and claim the sun was not visible for 24 hours. Again, I've never done this for myself. The final experiment seeks to eliminate having to figure out who's telling the truth and decipher exactly what it was that people saw in the sky and to figure out why their videos have edits and cuts in them. We remove all of that and we simply perform the experiment together, side by side, with an agreement ahead of time that there either will be a 24-hour sun or there won't be, and what it means depending on which one we find while we're there. So let me first answer the one question everyone is going to ask. What if you don't get someone from each side to agree to go to Antarctica? That's a valid concern. And because we wanted the final experiment to be final, we considered this ahead of time. And we will be paying for one person from each side to go to Antarctica for the final experiment. And if you would like to sponsor someone to go and be there with us in Antarctica, that would be great. You can sponsor a specific person. You can sponsor someone of our choosing from a specific side, flat or globe. Or better yet, you can sponsor 2 people, one from each side. This is one of the reasons we invited 24 flat earthers and 24 globe earthers to participate in the experiment itself, so that we should have plenty from each side who are excited to participate. As you saw in our last video that we released on YouTube, flat earthers have been saying for years that they are not only willing to go to Antarctica, but they are already making plans to go. So I'm not worried about not having a flat earther join us in Antarctica, especially since we will be paying for one of them to go. I could not find many globe earthers talking about going to Antarctica or expressing a desire to go there, but I suspect they are going to want to go as well. They are just as invested in their belief that we live on a globe as flat earthers are that we don't live on a globe. The final experiment actually has 3 parts to it, and you don't even have to go to Antarctica to participate. The first part of the final experiment is we are going to see if either side starts to change their position and what they've been saying for years. For example, if globe earthers all of a sudden start to say things like, well, there might not be a 24-hour sun in Antarctica, but there's definitely 24 hours of light. That's a huge change in what they've been saying for years. They have only said that there definitely is a 24-hour sun during the southern summer in Antarctica. And if flat earthers all of a sudden start saying things like, well, there's actually a second sun, and that second sun does a 360-degree circle around your head when you visit Antarctica, that's a massive change in what they've been saying all these years. They have stated emphatically that there is not a 24-hour sun in Antarctica. And the best case scenario is that there is 24 hours of light, but that the sun absolutely will not be visible for 24 hours. So part 1 of the final experiment is to see who from either side is going to change their position now that we are going to actually put it to the test. Now that we are going to actually do this experiment on location in Antarctica, who is going to go back on what they've been saying all along? If they do, that means they really don't believe what they've been saying to their followers. We sincerely hope no one is going to do this, and we don't expect either side will, but just in case they do, we are going to keep track of how many people do this from each side and see if it's only one side or the other that does it, or if it's about equal on each side. Part 2 of the final experiment is to keep score of how many of the official invited participants, 24 from each side, actually choose to participate. We will have a scoreboard on our website, thefinalexperiment.com, keeping score of how many of the 24 flat earthers choose to participate and how many of the 24 globe earthers choose to participate. And here's the best part. We have made it incredibly easy to participate and be counted on the scoreboard as someone who officially participated. If you are one of the 48 who were invited to participate, all you need to do is one of these 3 things, and you will be counted as someone who officially participated in the final experiment. First, you can join us in Antarctica this December. Second, you can interview me on your channel to talk about the final experiment. And third, you can submit a suggestion to make the final experiment a more robust experiment. Let me cover each of these in detail. If you want to join us in Antarctica, we will be there from December 14th through December 18th. And you will need to purchase a seat on the plane through Antarctic Logistics and Expeditions. ALE is based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, and they've been flying people to Antarctica since 1987, which is over 30 years. If you want to interview me on your channel, just reach out to us and we can get something scheduled. It can be live or pre-recorded and aired at a date and time of your choosing. This is a really fun way to participate, as it's easy, doesn't cost anything, and you don't want to be the only one not talking about the final experiment. I will answer any questions you have and will gladly take questions from your audience as well. And finally, if you want to make a suggestion which will make the final experiment better, that will also count as official participation. We can't think of everything, and I'm sure both sides are going to want to make sure that this experiment is done in full integrity. So no lies, no CGI, no doctored videos. Any idea that you would like for the participants to do while in Antarctica, we will make every effort to make that happen for you. But just your suggestion alone is enough to count on our scoreboard of who has participated and who has not. So this is it. 2024 is the year that this age-old debate will finally come to an end. This will be historic, and you don't want to miss out on participating on such a historic event. And if you were not one of the 48 people invited to be an official participant, don't lose hope. Anyone can participate. Yes, anyone. If you want to come with us to Antarctica, come along. Just email us and we'll get you all the details on our trip. If you want to interview me on your channel about the final experiment, I'd love to. Just reach out to me through our website and we can get it scheduled. And we will keep a small bonus scoreboard of how many people who were not on the official invitee list who interview me, and see if one side has a lot more than the other. And finally, if you want to make a suggestion for while we are in Antarctica to make the final experiment a more complete, well thought out experiment, contact us through our website. We want nothing more than for this to be the best experiment ever conducted and to be the final experiment on the shape of the Earth. Can't wait.